If you want to know what's going on in the world right now, simply turn on your TV and watch the news. If you want to know what was happening in the world hundreds or thousands of years ago, talk to a historian or an archaeologist. They have incredible stories to tell because they're the ones who uncover the past. And sometimes, what they find is almost impossible to believe. Number 15. St. Bavo's Bone Walls. There are some discoveries that sound scary even before you know the full details, and this is definitely one of them. Beneath St. Bavo's Cathedral in Ghent, archaeologists uncovered walls built almost entirely from human bones. Well, not scattered remains or a burial pit, but real walls, arranged with intention. Most of the structure was made using adult thigh and shin bones, while the gaps between them were packed with skull fragments and other remains. It's the kind of thing that immediately makes you stop and ask what on earth happened here. The bones date back to the second half of the 15th century and likely came from a cemetery clearing, which wasn't unusual in crowded medieval cities where burial space constantly ran out. Even so, the way these bones were selected and arranged feels unusually deliberate. One detail that makes it even stranger is the near-total absence of arm bones. No one really knows why. And despite how extraordinary the discovery is, the structure won't stay there forever. It's being removed. Number 14. The Herculaneum Library Scrolls. When the mighty and monstrous Mount Vesuvius erupted back in AD 79, it buried entire cities beneath ash and destruction, preserving them in the most tragic way imaginable. One of the greatest losses was the library at Herculaneum, now believed to be the only surviving library from antiquity. Inside it were hundreds of scrolls, all carbonized by the eruption and left so fragile that opening them would destroy them completely. That means whatever knowledge they contain has remained sealed for almost 2,000 years. Those texts could reveal priceless details about life in the Roman world before disaster struck. But for a long time, they seemed permanently unreachable. That may finally be changing. Scientists working at the Diamond Light Source facility in Oxford believe they can virtually unwrap and read the scrolls using powerful synchrotron light beams. The work is still ongoing, but the hope is enormous. Since no other libraries from the era survived, that these scrolls are viewed as an unmatched archaeological treasure. Number 13. The Senufo Oracle Figure. Some artifacts feel unsettling before you even understand what you are looking at. That strange reaction has followed the Senufo Oracle Figure for years. Known as Catyelileo, the object is now housed at the Met Museum in New York, but even today, its exact purpose and meaning remain unresolved. The name is often translated as "He Who Speaks the Truth," which only adds to its unnerving reputation. It is believed to have been created by the Senufo people, most likely in present-day Ivory Coast, though even that cannot be stated with total certainty. People who have seen it up close have sometimes described an unexplained sense of tension or unease while standing near it. According to modern Senufo traditions, it may represent invisible bush spirits and could once have been used during trials to expose lies. Ownership was supposedly restricted to the most senior male or female in a community, and even then, it would not have been openly displayed in the home. It is likely around 200 years old, but mystery still clings to it. Number 12. Emperor Xiaomin's tomb power in ancient history often looks impressive from a distance, but the closer you get, the more fragile it starts to feel. That's part of what makes the tomb of Emperor Xiaomin so interesting. Archaeologists discovered it near Xi'an, China, during excavations close to an expressway, and the burial is believed to belong to the founder of the Northern Zhou dynasty, who ruled only briefly in the 6th century. Born Yuan Jue, he didn't even take the full imperial title, choosing instead to call himself Heavenly Prince, which already hints at the political tension around his reign. And let's say that tension ended pretty badly. He was eventually deposed and executed by his own cousin. The tomb itself includes a long approach passage leading to a single burial chamber deep underground. Inside, archaeologists found ceramic vessels and figurines showing warriors, cavalry, a camel, and other funerary offerings. With the help of the epitaph stone, they confirm the tomb's identity. For someone who ruled such a short time, the discovery leaves behind a surprisingly strong reminder of how quickly and badly power could rise and collapse. Number 11. Codex Argentius. As Roman influence faded across Western Europe, the Goths briefly rose into power and left behind something far more lasting than their time on the battlefield. They became the first Germanic people to convert to Christianity, and from that shift came one of the most remarkable religious manuscripts of the medieval world, the Codex Argentius. This mysterious silver Bible is the earliest known translation of the scriptures into the Gothic language. It was once believed to be the work of a single bishop, but scholars now think several scribes likely produced it under his direction. Its creation required more than translation alone. A Gothic alphabet had to be developed for the task, since the older runic system carried strong pagan associations and was not considered appropriate. Written on calfskin stained a royal purple shade, and this book was almost certainly made for Theodoric the Great. Then it vanished for nearly 1,000 years. When it reappeared at Werden Abbey in the 16th century, nobody knew where it actually had been. Number 10. Batcave Sandals and Baskets. Most people don't expect something as ordinary as a sandal or a basket to survive for maybe thousands of years, but this one does. In a cave in southern Spain, archaeologists re-examined a group of objects first found back in the 1800s and realized they were looking at some of the oldest woven items ever discovered in southern Europe. The collection included baskets and grass sandals made from organic materials like reeds, wood, and esparto grass. Radiocarbon dating showed the sandals were around 6,200 years old, while some of the baskets were even older, reaching back roughly 9,500 years. And that alone is remarkable, but the real surprise is the skill behind them. These weren't crude survival objects. Some were decorated with dyed fibers, geometric patterns, and human hair. That level of craftsmanship changes how we think about Mesolithic people. They weren't simply getting by. They were making things with care, detail, and intention. And thanks to the cave's dry conditions, those traces of everyday life somehow survived. Number 9. The Cleitian of St. Kilda. There are abandoned places that feel empty, and then there are places that feel like they never really let go of the people who left. St. Kilda belongs firmly in the second category. Isolated far out in the Atlantic and more remote than anywhere else in the British Isles, the island feels less like a forgotten settlement and more like the edge of the world. Long before its final residents left for mainland Scotland in the 1930s, people here built small stone shelters known as Cleitian. Hundreds of them still stand across the landscape, low and stubborn against the wind. Each was made from dry stone walls, topped with a stone slab roof, and capped with turf to keep out the rain. Even so, they seem strangely exposed, built in a way that allowed air to pass through them freely. That may have helped preserve food or supplies, but it would have made them miserable places to live. Later generations built proper homes, and somewhere along the way, the true story behind these eerie structures disappeared with them. All right now, let's move to number 8. Shakespeare's hidden stage workers restoring St. George's Guildhall in King's Lynn thought they were just pulling up old flooring. Instead, they ended up uncovering something far more important: oak floorboards dating back around 600 years, and possibly the last surviving stage boards from Shakespeare's lifetime. That alone is enough to make historians lose their minds. The Guildhall was first built in the early 15th century as a religious meeting place, but later became a venue for performances. And according to local historical records, Shakespeare may have performed there in 1593, while London's theaters were shut down because of plague. The boards themselves are thick, wide, and held together with wooden pegs, likely laid by shipwrights sometime between 1417 and 1430. For a building that nearly got demolished before being saved and turned into an art center, this discovery feels almost ridiculous. So, guys, what's your take on it? Well, let us know. Number 7. The Laetoli footprints. Some ancient discoveries do not just answer questions. They quietly tear up old assumptions and replace them with something far more important. That is exactly what happened with the footprints found at Laetoli in Tanzania. For years, these 3.7 million-year-old prints were misunderstood and dismissed as bear tracks. But researchers now agree they were made by early humans, making them some of the oldest direct evidence of upright walking ever found. The footprints were originally uncovered by paleontologist Mary Leakey between 1976 and 1978, yet their true significance was not fully appreciated at the time. Today, scientists believe they were most likely left by Australopithecus afarensis, the same species as the famous fossil known as Lucy. Looking at them now, the mistake seems almost unbelievable. And bears have feet that taper toward the toes, while human feet are squarer and feature a prominent big toe. Those human traits are clearly visible here. Chimpanzees also fail to match because their heel shape is different. These prints did not just survive history. They changed it in ways no one imagined. Number 6. The rock art site of Cuscuz de Molinos. For centuries, travelers crossing the Andes passed through this lonely stretch of land without fully realizing how much history was staring back at them. Known as Cuscuz de Molinos, this ancient rock art site in Chile is covered in carvings of humans, camelids, and unusual birds, all etched into stone by hands long gone. It sits along a route used by merchants between the 10th and 15th centuries, before the Incas took control of the region. More than 60 engraved stone blocks survive there, arranged across 27 separate panels. Even more remarkably, the grooves left behind by wagons and caravans are still visible in the ground. Some of the carved images may have acted as directional markers, while others could have held information important to those passing through. There is also reason to believe the area carried spiritual importance. Objects buried nearby may have been offerings to Pachamama, the Andean goddess of earth, fertility, and time. Despite all that, the site remains unprotected and is slowly being worn away. Number 5. The aluminum object from Romania. Some discoveries refuse to behave. They sit in the historical record like a splinter, too strange to ignore and too inconvenient to explain. That is exactly the case with the mysterious aluminum object discovered in Romania in 1973. The artifact was reportedly found during the country's communist era, but its existence remained largely hidden from public discussion for decades because of how controversial it seemed. The real problem is not just what it is, but how old it might be. Some tests claimed the object was around 250,000 years old, which would make its composition almost impossible to explain. Humans only began producing aluminum around 2 centuries ago. That absurd gap is what led some people to suggest it could be part of an alien craft. More grounded theories say it may have been part of a tool, perhaps even an axe head. Later testing in Switzerland proposed a much younger age of around 8,000 years. That sounds safer, but it still does not explain how ancient aluminum ended up here. Do you have any idea? Number 4. The oldest Celtic die now. Let's go to a Celtic settlement in Samborowice, Poland, where archaeologists uncovered something small enough to fit in a hand, but strange enough to leave historians arguing over it. It was a die, nothing magical, carved from bone or antler, and dated to around 2,000 years ago, making it the oldest one ever found in Poland. On the surface, it sounds like a simple gaming object. But once researchers looked closer, it became harder to explain. The longer sides of the die were marked only with the highest values, 5 and 6, which doesn't fit the usual pattern. That has led some to wonder whether it was made incorrectly, used for cheating, or belonged to a game no one understands anymore. It was found inside a semi-subterranean structure used for craft work, which only adds to the mystery. The same excavation also turned up an iron fibula, and a kind of brooch used to fasten clothing. Taken together, the discoveries offer a strangely personal glimpse into everyday life at a settlement most people have never heard of. Number 3. The Gethsemane Mikveh. Have archaeologists finally uncovered physical evidence tied to one of Christianity's most sacred locations? Some believe they may have come surprisingly close. In December 2020, researchers working near the Garden of Gethsemane in Jerusalem discovered a 2,000-year-old ritual bath, known in Jewish tradition as a mikveh. The timing of the discovery, just before Christmas, only deepened the attention surrounding it. The Israel Antiquities Authority confirmed not only the mikveh itself, but also the remains of a Byzantine-era church nearby, dating back roughly 1,500 years. More importantly, the bath represents the first direct archaeological evidence of human activity in Gethsemane during the time of Christ. An ancient oil press was also identified in the area, which may connect with descriptions found in the New Testament. The mikveh would have been used by workers for ritual purification before beginning daily labor. It does not prove the Last Supper happened here, but it certainly keeps that possibility alive. Number 2. Willowford Roman Bridge. People often imagine Hadrian's Wall as one long, uninterrupted barrier slicing across northern Britain, but that image is far too simple. In reality, it was a far more complex structure made up of smaller walls, forts, crossings, and engineered connections. One of the most fascinating of those is Willowford Roman Bridge, located on the east bank of the River Irthing in Cumbria. And for years it was treated as a relatively minor Roman bridge, useful but unremarkable. That view has changed. Archaeologists now believe the bridge, built in the year 122, once carried Hadrian's Wall itself across the river, rather than simply allowing soldiers to cross on foot. That completely changes its significance. Very little remains today beyond foundations and the base of a tower, but the surviving stonework still reveals extraordinary craftsmanship. The use of dovetails and iron bar cramps to bind the masonry together shows a level of technical precision that feels almost modern. It is another reminder that Roman engineering was not merely practical. At times, it bordered on unnervingly advanced for its age. All right, now, let's end this with Number 1. Marsala Roman Shipwreck. At Marausa Coast in Sicily, archaeologists recovered something that almost never survives in one piece: a Roman shipwreck pulled from the sea largely intact. Known as Marausa II, the vessel was found just a short distance from shore and in surprisingly shallow water, which makes its preservation even more remarkable. The ship dates back to the 3rd century and measures roughly 40 feet long and 13 feet wide. Raising it wasn't simple. Archaeologists had to secure the wreck inside a custom metal frame, remove layers of sediment with extreme care, and slowly lift it using flotation devices. Inside the ship, they found transport amphorae, many of them broken, along with objects that researchers described as unusual and rare, though not all details have been publicly revealed. After recovery, the ship was moved to the Baglio Anselmi Archaeological Museum in Marsala, where it began a long process of desalination and restoration. Even now, the full story of what it was carrying still hasn't completely surfaced. If you found this video interesting, please like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.